Good evening and welcome to the October 9th, 2012 meeting of the Easthampton School Committee. We will begin with announcements. And the first announcement is that this meeting is being recorded by Easthampton Public Access Cable.
And the next school committee meetings are October 23rd, November 13th, and 27th, and December 11th. There are half days of school on Thursday and Friday, October 25th and 26th, due to parent-teacher conferences. There's a half day of school on Friday, November 2nd, due to Teacher Professional Development Day. There is no school on Tuesday, November 6th, due to Election Day. There is a half day of school on Wednesday, November 21st, and no school on Thursday and Friday, November 22nd and 23rd, due to Thanksgiving break. There's no school December 24th through January 1st due to winter break. School will reopen on Wednesday, January 2nd, 2013. And Peter, I'd just like to take this opportunity to introduce our student rep, Bailey Murphy, who's sitting to my left. Bailey, welcome. And she's going to alternate as student rep with who?
Samantha Brand.
Samantha Brand. Right, so Bailey's with us tonight. Thank you, Bailey.
You're welcome.
That's terrific, and it's a great lead into one other announcement, which is that on Wednesday, November 7th, Easthampton High School and the Wilson Northampton School will be holding a joint We the People showcase from 6:30 to 8 o'clock at what I believe will be the Reed Center, but I'll confirm the actual location on the Wilson campus. But it'll be an opportunity for Bailey and other veterans of the We the People program, the state champion We the People program, to serve as judges, as my understanding is what Ms. Brown has lined you up to do. Yes, or is this all news to you now?
This is all news to me.
Okay,
She
well,
hasn't told us yet.
she'll be coming with the hook for that soon, so be ready to join your former teammates there in that activity. And all school committee members, we're going to extend the invitation to City Council, the mayor. We have a pretty wide range of folks that we invite to come and serve as judges. It would be great. Anyone in the community is welcome to come and see the event. But we particularly need some folks who will be willing to stand up. I know that while Nancy Sykes is not here tonight, I'm hoping, given her experience, we can count on her to help out.
What's the date?
It's the Wednesday after the election, so I'm thinking the 7th.
City council night, yeah.
Oh, it is a city council
Yes,
night.
it is.
Yeah, I was afraid that we would run into that competition there. So stay tuned, and we'll get you information about the opportunity to come and help with that. Okay, thanks. The last piece is just a regular announcement that we make, inviting folks who might be interested in helping tape city government meetings, like the school committee meeting, like the city council meeting. They're always looking for volunteers at the Easthampton Cable Access. The phone number, this evening I want to thank Tim for helping all of you get to see this meeting, and if you are interested in volunteering, I think we have a volunteer there. I saw someone else joining Tim who looked like he was learning how this process unfolds. The phone number to call is 413-203-1360, and you can speak with Kathy. We have gifts, yes? No gifts. Okay, that's an opportunity for all you folks out there. We should not have a month where we have no gifts. So please give gifts in time for our next meeting. It's the gift-giving season that we're moving into. Okay, fine. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on a matter that is not on the agenda or in advance? Oh, we're zooming here. Okay, so, subcommittee reports then.
Finance subcommittee meeting is scheduled for this Thursday at 6 p.m.
Great. LaDonna, do we have a policy review?
We do not have any meetings scheduled at the moment.
Thanks. And Lori, back to you for CES.
I received some information today. I just wanted to quickly share. The Collaborative for Educational Services is offering a series of workshops that's designed for parents, grandparents, and guardians of children from birth to kindergarten age. And it's called The Puzzle of Parenting. And if anybody is interested, if they go to the collaborative.org website, there'll be more information out there.
Thank you. Bailey, this is the point in all future meetings where you and Sam will be called upon to give us a sense of from your perspective, what's going on in the schools, particularly the high school, but any of the schools, anything that you're aware of. So how are things these days at school?
Pretty good.
Any big events coming up? Anything that you can report? I know that this is a surprise because you had to switch at the last moment.
Yes.
Anything from sort of school activities, dances, I know there's often fundraisers, athletic events, anything of that type you should feel free to share with us. Not this occasion, I'm just sort of saying going forward, that those are the kinds of things that we love to hear from Sam and from you so that we have a sense from a student perspective about what's going on, and also if there are concerns or issues that you or your fellow students have, this is an opportunity for you to present them to the school committee for our consideration. So when you come up with that silver bullet that's going to make everything perfect, this is the forum to share it.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So we'll look forward to those presentations going forward. Are there any other matters for discussion? Do we have anything new, Nancy, for tonight?
No, nothing that's not on the agenda.
Okay, super. Then we'll move to the superintendent's report and the labor. This is the document that we have here, yes?
Yes,
Okay.
this was just passed out to you. I just wanted to give you an update on the search for a replacement for Jim Connors, our labor management consultant. We have sent out requests for proposal to 3 attorneys who were recommended highly to us by other superintendents in other districts, as well as by Jim Connors. So we're going to get 3 proposals, and this outlines what we're talking to them about as the scope of services and what they would like, what we would like them to bring to us in terms of a presentation. They need to submit their copies of their proposals to us by October 16th. And at that point in time, we will schedule an appointment for them to come and meet with at least some of the school committee members so that you can help make a decision about which of these people you'd like to have as our labor management consultant. And I don't know whether you want to have the full committee interview all of these candidates or a subcommittee. We're on a tight time frame, and we want to try to get this accomplished so that we can get someone in place by November 1st.
Just a
Mike.
question, Nancy, are we intending to try to duplicate the model that Jim used for delivery of services, or are you looking actually for retainer and hourly?
No, we're trying to duplicate the model that we've been using with Jim. It would be what we're looking for, I believe, you can advise me as well, but is a retainer, similar to what we paid to Jim as our consultant, and for the same type of services, which are outlined in the scope of services. I've had preliminary discussions with 2 of the 3 attorneys, and they seem very agreeable to that model.
Do you have the names of the 3 that you've solicited?
You want me to give you those?
Well, you don't have to give it to me now, but yeah,
Yeah,
I would
do.
like to.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I think maybe the whole
I think
committee
probably, yes.
Right.
would be helpful.
We'll do that. I'll get those names to you.
Thank you.
Is there a preference? I think given the time frame that may affect our flexibility in terms of how many people. I think it is important for at least one member of the school committee, and I think ideally at least 2. If 2 people meet with these candidates, then it allows for an information flow without it becoming a public meeting. And so I thought if there were 2 of us, that would meet. That would be my recommendation. But that's just a recommendation. Do other folks have thoughts about that?
I can be available because I'm local, so it would be easy for me to get here.
I'm fine with just 2 people, makes sense.
And I'm local as well, and I think if it's possible to have the same 2 people, so it may turn out to be Lori and I, unless there's someone, I mean, Nancy's not here, and we certainly would extend the opportunity, but if people think that having 2 people along with the superintendent meet with each of the candidates, that would be great. Okay, so for now, we'll have it as Lori and Peter, but if anyone else, wants to step up to do that, I'm happy to defer. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. The next piece in my report is the student enrollment information. I asked Sue Colby to give you last year's October 1st data so you could compare it with this year's October data. And this is the official data. We had preliminary data in September. We do have this official data from the October report now. We can see this year that we've had a decrease in the early childhood program enrollment. We had an extraordinarily large number of students last year for early childhood, and we're down by about 17 this year. We have had an increase in enrollment in kindergarten over last year by about 15 students. And as you recall, we had a number of families who wanted to have their students' choice into kindergarten, but our goal was to keep the class sizes reasonable. And we've had an increase in elementary enrollment by about 16 students, I believe it is. A decrease at White Brook of about 14 students, and an increase at the high school, I think about seven students, right?
So the total number this year is is 9 more students?
Yes, that's right.
Right.
So, any questions on that?
What happens, like, last year, grade 3 had 150 kids, and this year,
That's this
Grade
year.
4
Last year, those were the
160.
grade 2 folks, 147. This year, it's
Right, they're
150
just
in grade 3.
moving up through. See, in grade 2 last year, there were
pig in the python.
147.
right, but so in grade 4, there's 116 this year.
Last year.
Right,
Oh, this is last year.
yeah.
The
I'm
other
going the
sheet,
other-
the
other
other
way.
sheet that you have is.
I'm looking at the wrong year.
Yeah.
I'm going the wrong way. All right,
Yeah, so that large class size is moving up
2
through
to 3.
the
Okay.
grades.
And that's part of what forces the dynamic every year with the rebalancing of teaching responsibilities, is that as, unlike the pig in the python, this isn't going away. We hope to have 150, well, if you're in grade 3, what does that make you, the class of 2022, something, roughly? Oh, come on, folks, we're teachers, educators, we can figure out the math here. If you're in 3rd grade, you graduate with a class of 22, right? We're hoping that'll be a class of
Yes, because my son's in 4th grade, he's a class of 21. How's
There we
that?
go. Thank you, Bonnie.
Anyway, we would like to see 150 students graduate in that class. I mean, that would be our goal.
Be excellent. Yes. Okay, any other questions about student enrollment? All right. I'm going to now introduce my building administrators one by one. I have 3 of them here this evening to report on their school improvement goals. I also included in the packet that I sent to you their student learning goal. Each administrator has the responsibility to have 2 personal goals. One is a student learning goal and one is a professional practice goal, very similar to the goals that I shared with you. And I asked them to share their student learning goals so that you could see the strand of flow in the goals from superintendent rather to principal, and then the teacher goals are aligning with their school improvement goals and with the administrator's goal for student learning in his or her building. So I'm going to ask them to come up and just speak about those goals and their plans and perhaps how they created those goals. I've had conversations with each of the administrators. They bring a draft goal to me, and then we have a discussion and come up with a final goal. Final goals rather that work for us and work for our district and are aligned with our strategic plan and the goals that you've set for me. So we'll have Center Pepin first, you're going together. Okay, Center Pepin and Maple. And we do like to keep consistency in our elementary schools, so I was very happy to see that our 2 elementary principals have done a lot of collaboration on these goals.
Yes, and that's why we felt it was appropriate for us to come up together, because our goals are very similar. First, let me just say that the driving force behind our goals, both our student learning goal, our personal goal, and our school improvement goals, was a great deal of work that happened last spring and over the summer. We had a good deal of data that we've collected by surveying our staff and using various tools to kind of gauge where our schools were at in terms of our curriculum, our assessment materials, our school climate, things like that. And these are tools that are used throughout the state, so they're they're researched, they give us very good information. So we, in our administrative retreats that we had this summer with Nancy, as well as some long leadership conferences that Rob and I and Allison went to this summer, really worked together to create these goals. So that's kind of what drove these. So the first goal that both of our schools is working on is around data and using data, and in my case, and I believe Rob's case, our student learning goal is really focused on data as well, and using that data to increase our MCAS scores. So that's the goal. That's a little bit different in each of our schools. And at Maple, we've developed a data team that is going to be analyzing various forms of data that you could see on our goal, starting with the MCAS data, but also looking at information that we gleaned through our district assessments in reading and math, and then looking at other ways that we can gather data, discipline data, attendance data, just all those different ways that we might be able to assess how we're doing. So this team, we've been doing it kind of in an informal way over the years, but now we've got a team to address that. And so Rob's is a little bit different, and he'll talk about his team.
It's fairly similar to what Tim's doing at Maple School. Systemically, we have the ability to do some work on Tuesday afternoons, so I think Tim's group is meeting after school, correct?
Before school.
Before school. We're meeting during the school day, and it looks very similar. So we've already had 3 sessions, so we've looked at last year's MCAS data in grade 4 and grade 3. This actually today was my first meeting with a grade 3 team who wanted to look at their Unit 1 math assessment data. They just finished giving the Unit 1 test. So the purpose of looking at this data is, number one, to summarize kind of how we're doing, but most importantly, look at trends and see where we need to work with certain pods of kids. Because, for example, in math, you may be a very strong, strong computationally. You can add and subtract very well. But then when you get to, let's say, Unit 2, which might be geometry, you might be a little weaker in that. So depending on the content being presented, we wanted the intervention groups to be flexible based on the information being presented to the kids. And the data team time gives us the vehicle to look at that data in a systemic way. So doing the same work, just it's looking a little differently based on how our schedules are arranged in our schools. Anything else to add to that, Tim? Okay. So one of the goals next goal I'm going to talk about is the school climate goal. And Tim and I worked very closely on this. As Tim mentioned, the whole state, all the teachers participated in the MassTel survey last year. And Tim and I really looked at that, as the entire administrative team did, very closely to see how our teachers saw our schools and how we were doing. And one of the areas that really stuck out for both Tim and I was this area of students having and faculty having the same expectations for behavior within the building. And we're not really talking about students on who are special education students who have more severe social emotional issues. We're talking about the majority, all of the general population of students and teachers being on the same page with what we expect kids to how they should act and what they should do within a school building. So based on some work from Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports, which is a research-based national group. And if you want more information about that group, it's www.pbis.org. It's a great resource for more information about what we're doing. We developed a set of expectations for our students. And we approach it very different. The way PBIS approaches this is very different. So we don't, we have our handbook, we have expectations in there. But the important thing about this is that, number one, our faculty agreed together that these are the things we expect out of our children. And number two, we concretely and tangibly have taught the students what we expect. So we've done things like role plays. We've shown videos of how this looks in a school building. So we've actually gone to teaching students and not just assuming they know what we mean when we mean act appropriately in the cafeteria. Well, let's break that out. How does that look? What does that mean? Well, you walk, you say please and thank you to the lunch staff, you clean up your mess, you don't share your food. So we've really gotten very concrete with our K through 4 students about how this should look. And we're reinforcing these behaviors using some school-wide reinforcement programs in each of the buildings. In my school, we're doing something called Eagle Cards. So students are identified for doing the right thing very specifically. On those cards, the teacher tells them exactly what they did that was correct. And after they get so many of these cards, they get rewarded with something special. And both schools are using the three. We have three overarching principles: be responsible, be respectful, and be safe. And all of our students are learning that motto again very concretely. They can state it, and they know that those are the overarching, enduring understandings we want them to have for being in our building. So, Tim, did you want to add anything to that one?
Just as you were talking about teaching explicitly the expectations, it just brought to my mind our first day of school. We spent time rotating around to the cafeteria, to the playground, and our custodian actually taught the expectations in the bathrooms. And the idea was that, you know, if you mess up the bathroom, if you do hang on the stalls, things like that, he's the person that's responsible for that. So we felt it was important for the kids to hear right from the person who was directly going to be taking care of that. So that just came to mind as Rob was talking about it.
And the last piece of this, we are collecting everything we do. We're collecting data on the new educator evaluation system. Really emphasizes the collection of data and making sure that what you're doing is effective, and you're not kind of guessing if it's effective. So we also did edit some of our referral forms in both of our buildings. They look pretty similar, so that we can track very closely, number one, how we're doing generally as a school, but then also if we have particular students that need some extra assistance with learning what we expect, that we can identify those students much more quickly and provide them that support that they need.
So the third goal that both our buildings are going to be focusing on is around parent involvement. And both of our buildings began working on this last year. We actually had a joint school council meeting that we did together and came up with a couple of parent events that were district-wide rather than just school-wide. So we wanted to continue on that work and then build on what each of our own buildings is doing. So some volunteer work, some events that were started last year, and those kinds of activities. So we're just going to keep working toward that. So that was pretty much it. Any questions? Yes.
I have actually 2 requests, and forgive me if you've already done this. Your goals mentioned something about a pamphlet going out to parents.
Yes.
Describing. Can we get a copy of that?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then also, when you know the dates of those principal-parent forums, can you email those to us? I'd be interested.
Yes,
in
we did. I did set ours January and March. I've got them in my book. I can email them to you.
I can do this.
I don't know if you've got yours
Are
yet.
those gonna happen at school?
These are going to be in people's homes. Yeah.
That's nice.
I hosted 2 last year.
Great.
One in the winter and one in the late spring before school got out, and they were very well attended. And actually, Tim and I really don't have to do a lot of the legwork because the parents have come forward to volunteer. Both said to me, I can get 10 families just based around the people I know in my neighborhood to come to the forum. So we had to do. It was very well attended, and actually, the last one was actually kind of big. Almost too big, not as intimate as I would like, but it was still a great conversation. So I think having it at folks' home just changes the dynamic. When the second one, we had kids playing in the backyard. It felt more informal. I think folks felt a little bit more comfortable sharing their concerns about stuff and also things that they really like about the school. So they were really positive, really positive. So when we thought about this year, I think we wanted to continue to do that.
Great, that's excellent. Other questions, Lori?
Well, I just wanted to make a point, because this is always interesting, with one of the goals being the managing the student conduct, is to what all your teachers have to do. You're teaching for all these other things, and then you also have to do like a behavioral aspect of it too. So there's so much that a teacher teaches, and it's not all schoolwork, and it amazes me, and now that that's a goal even, so it's wonderful that you're doing, but it just amazes me that you have to do that.
Well, we really are responsible for teaching the whole child.
Yeah.
And this is part of their education.
Yeah.
And part of doing it this way too is being sure that we as adults are all communicating the same thing to the children, so that it's not, you know, that teacher is really tough and this one's a little bit looser, and, you know, everybody has the same expectations in the halls and in all the different parts of the school. So it's, yes, it is, it feels that, you know, it's a different era when we're actually teaching children how to be polite to one another, but it's also about us being consistent with how we communicate with kids, so, but that's a
Good to
good
let the public know that how much you do in a day, I don't think people really know, because they're not there, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a real shame that what you have to do in addition to teaching. My sister is a teacher. In our last conversation, she mentioned that she thinks everybody should do 2 years of teaching. Just to get a sense of what teachers have to go through. And
Well,
kind
then-
of like some countries require people to go in the military for X amount of time. So it's,
Well, and perhaps 2 years of being an administrator in a school building also, because it is an awesome task. I just had one question for you and two comments. Do you have a link to that PBIS information or information on your websites about how to get more information about that?
I don't believe
Not
it.
yet.
No, I mean, I know that I can speak for me. I'm trying to revamp, because I do have a social curriculum link on my website. It talks more about responsive classroom, which we still do in second step, and we have to add this piece to it. And certainly, so yes, it will be on there, and certainly the pamphlet, the parent informational pamphlet that we send out will have that.
That'd be great, easy access for parents. And my two comments were just to lend to what you've said already. The administrators this summer, I think I mentioned this already, participated in some very intensive leadership training this summer. They were here a number of their days and really had very few summer days left for vacation this year because of all the trainings that we provided and encouraged them to attend. These were all grant-funded trainings, but they got some excellent leadership training. They brought that into our leadership retreat meetings this summer, and you can see them putting it into place now. You can tell this through their goals. So all very impressive work. And the other is I just wanted to support Tim in his comments about his teachers going around and teaching the students exactly what to do. On the first few days of school, I was over at Tim's building, and they were walking around and getting instructions on just how to do everything. So it's really about putting that consistency in place, and our administrators and our teachers work very hard to provide those quality programs. So thank you.
Actually,
Oh, a couple others.
I was just wondering, the TEL survey that you referenced, does that happen every year? No.
No, I think the last year we participated, it was maybe 3 years ago,
I think
3 or 4 years
three.
ago.
Seems to me it was 2008, but I'm not sure.
I was just curious about that. And then you mentioned the cards that you hand out for the kids.
Yes,
What was the name of those cards?
Eagle card, an Eagle card.
Eagle. I thought
Yeah.
you said, oh, I knew you didn't say this, but I understood
Evil.
you say evil.
I
Yeah,
thought the
that's
same
my-
thing.
that's my,
I was
um,
gonna ask, but.
I grew up in Philadelphia, and every now and again, my
comes
accent
through.
just comes through, you know. It's been a long time, but.
did you, wait a minute, as a native of Philadelphia, did you just suggest that Eagles and evil go together? I think there's a football
Possibly.
team that
I don't
might
want
have
to. I
some
don't want to
trouble
get
with
into that
that.
because we could be here all night with that. But
I wanted to offer two more. Do you have another comment?
No, that's good. Thank you.
I think first of all, I think that the folks at Research for Better Teaching do a lot of good work, and I know that I've been able to take advantage of it. But I wanted to emphasize that consistency and uniformity are two different things, and that even though there's this drive, and I'm pushing back a little bit against this, not what you guys have presented, but the desire by the state and by us nationally that we're going to get data on all of this stuff, and that data is the solution. I think it's important for people to push back and remind ourselves and to have faith in educators, and I'm probably speaking autobiographically here, that you can be consistent but be different. That is, that different teachers can employ their gifts and strengths as educators in different ways in the classroom and still provide equally good education for a variety of children. So I think that's important. The research, the folks at RBT do awesome work, and I think the data is useful. but I want to be sure that we focus on the consistency side without creating the impression that we desire uniformity of experience for our kids, or that teaching somehow will become a mechanical routine event. I can't imagine that that would happen, and certainly that it would ever be successful.
But that's pedagogy, Peter, and I think if you talk to our teachers, I think they will tell you that we curriculum-wise, we're providing the same curriculum to our kids, because that's what we need to do.
Right.
But pedagogically, we're not micromanaging that.
Right.
That
And I think that's great.
We want teachers to be able to be individuals and provide unique experiences for kids. So.
Because you guys have great individual teachers in your schools, and have had them and continue to grow great teachers there. So.
And we've wanted to create our own school cultures as well. Even though these are similar goals and we're doing a lot of similar things, we each create a culture, and that's a little unique in our own building. So that's important too. So.
Great. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to ask Allison Ribello, our principal of Whitebrook Middle School, to come up and talk about her goals.
Good evening. So I'll skip the beginning part because you've already heard from Superintendent Follansby and from the elementary principals, the background of how we started to create the goals. I would say the one thing that's a little bit different is that the data that we have at Whitebrook is obviously different from the elementary, and so that's where our goals are different a little bit from the elementary. My student learning goal is around the area of mathematics. That's an area that we continue to improve upon when we look at our MCAS scores, but we still have room for growth. As you know from past school improvement plans, we had worked on math as well, and we had started to implement the math expressions program and had worked on our 7th, 8th program. And so that has been, one piece. And so we've seen improvements from there. You'll see in a lot of my goals, they're similar to past years, but adding on sort of the next step of where we need to go. So for example, for mathematics, we've been working on curriculum and instruction and aligning that to the Common Core. And so the very beginning of my goal is ending that piece and then moving on to the next step. So looking at the effective math practices, also, working on targeting students for our MCAS after school program and really looking carefully at that data. Trying to get all teachers, not just math teachers, involved in the teaching of mathematics. So really making it clear to students that every area can take part, even from PE to art, and the teachers have been having a lot of good discussions about ways that they can include math in their curriculum that relates to what they're already doing, and again, for more time for students to be able to have access to math and instruction. And then one of the other pieces that we are working on this year is creating a mid-year MCAS-like assessment that can be given to all the students, because one of the things that we've always looked at is our end-of-the-year data, which looks at MCAS, and that's too late. So really looking at something halfway through the year, so that way we can then target more students with what they need, depending on where they are. And so that's where my student learning goal comes from. And then our school improvement goals, if you remember from last year, we were working on formative and summative assessments, more on the summative assessments and creating these common assessments in each of the curricular areas. And now what we're doing is taking those pieces and saying, okay, now let's look at the data from that. So how are our students doing on each of those assessments, and how is that going to change how we're instructing? Whether we need to review, whether it's a small group of students that we need to pull aside and work with them. How are we going to differentiate our lessons? How are we going to, use the information that we're getting from these assessments to inform our practice? And then, similar to the elementary schools, we're creating data teams to then look at this data. At the middle school, it's going to look a little bit different from elementary, just based on how our schedule and everything is set up. So I'm doing a lot of work with our curriculum team leaders because we have set meetings where we meet twice a month after school. And so those are the team leaders for each of the content areas. And so we're going to have discussions and then create action plans. And then there's going to be times where we may want to work on 5 and 6 math. And so I will pull all of the 5th and 6th grade math teachers or all of the 7th and 8th grade ELA teachers. So we're going to be looking at data in a variety of ways this year. And then also using our faculty meeting time to be able to look at student work, which is, again, the next step of where we were from last year, of looking at that student work and saying, so what exactly is this showing us, and where do we go from there? And then the second school improvement plan really relates to my student learning goal, which is around the area of mathematics. So one of the things that we know is that many of our students who are in the warning failing category are special education students and Title I students. And, you know, although in one way that sort of makes sense because those students are on an education plan because they're not working at grade level expectations, but we still need to move them up as much as possible to where our grade level expectations are. And so our goal is to work with special education teachers and regular education teachers. And one of the things that I was hearing from our staff in past years is that they didn't have time to collaborate because the special ed teachers are teaching at the same time as the regular ed teachers. And so trying to find that time for them to be able to meet, to really work together in a more co-teaching model. And I'm working with the special education director to really look at our programs and find out what's effective and then what areas in special education that we need to improve upon. And then also ensuring that the special education teachers have the same training that our regular education teachers do. Because, you know, in the past, sometimes it doesn't happen because if they're teaching more than one subject area and we're doing a math professional development, for example, they might be working on English language arts. So really making sure that they have the ability to also do that. And then the other piece that we're going to do is to have them take the same mid-year common assessment so that we can assess where they are in relation to all of our regular education students as well. And then the third goal are, again, things that we're trying to look at in every single class, in every single classroom. So we know that students are going to perform well if they are able to hear clear instructional objectives, if there's a variety of instructional strategies that are being used in the classroom, and if the teacher's checking for understanding. So those are the 3 key areas that we're looking at to be able to see in every single classroom. So whether it be, you know, somebody from school committee coming through the classes, or the superintendent, or the curriculum director, or myself, any of us going into the classrooms, we should be able to see these 3 things happening, and that it's really clear to students what the objective is, what the lesson is about, that they're checking for understanding, so that at the end of the lesson, the teachers are able to say, I know exactly which students are struggling and which ones, you know, I need to follow up with before tomorrow's lesson, and really looking at the diverse needs that students have and working on those. So those are the sort of main idea of each of my goals, and of course there's, you know, key actions to each of those, but you have those in front of you.
Questions that folks have?
What's the actual method of the mid-year assessment? Is it actually a test that you've created, or some other kind of method?
Yeah, so what the math teachers are doing right now is they are actually creating a mid-year assessment, which is like a test using some examples from MCAS, because one of the things that we're finding is that the students may know how to, for example, find equal fractions, but the way that it's worded on the MCAS, they may not understand what it's asking. Or, you know, including open response questions in with, you know, the regular test objectives.
Yes, please.
Can you just remind me, do the special education students take the same exact MCAS?
They take the same exact MCAS. And so that's where, you know, that's one of the things that we're trying to work on right now, because one of the things that the state looks at is our subgroup of special education students who take the same exact test as everybody else, and that's where quite a few of our warning needs improvement students are.
Do they get help? Are they, like, how does that work? Are
They're
they allowed help?
They're able, according to their IEPs, they're able to get accommodations, but they don't get help on solving it. So, for example, if it's a student who has trouble, reading and it's at a certain level, they may be able to have the math or science test read to them, but you can only read exactly what's there. So there's no hints, no help or anything like that. Or, a student might be able to use a reference sheet or a place marker to help them keep track. Or if it's a student who has trouble, going from the test booklet to the answer booklet, they might have somebody who can help them bubble. But again, they're taking the test themselves. It's just different accommodations like that.
It is amazing, isn't it? To think
Yes.
about that, and that as the achievement gap is one of the key criteria, right? That the spread, and the more we
Narrow that gap.
Yeah, we want to narrow that gap while constantly striving to make the offerings for our strongest students challenging, so that they continue to grow. Which means that narrowing the gap means everybody's got to get better at a significant rate. Other questions or comments?
I was just gonna comment, I was talking to Shirley Gilfeather at the event on Friday night, and I really admired how the high school, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, instilled writing in all of their subjects. So whether it was in gym or whatever subject it was, there had to be a writing piece where the students, there was a name for it, I can't remember what it
Open response writing.
Yeah, yeah.
Or writing to learn.
Or writing to
Writing to
learn.
learn, that's what it is. And now hearing that we're doing the same with math, again, just to strengthen the skills of the kids, I think that's great. I think it also, a lot of kids just totally freak out around math, and this might help them relax a little bit. And we're always saying use math in everyday life. Well, if they're using it in all of their subjects, that kind of brings that home.
And there, like I said, there's been great discussion. Chris Cleary, our art teacher, has already looked at different ways that she can bring math into what she's already doing as well.
That's great.
And we have a goal throughout the district of trying to bring literacy and math instruction across the curriculum. And I think our administrators are doing a wonderful job of trying to implement that.
And yet another thing that all the teachers are doing, not just teaching their own subjects and doing behavioral things, but also helping with other subjects at all. So.
Right. So we're all teachers of literacy, we're all teachers of math. And, but I will also mention here that I think one of you asked about the support for the special needs students. And as you know, with the gap in funding from the state for our schools, we have had to be more and more creative about providing support for our special needs students and our Title I students. We've had to eliminate positions in all of our schools that were formerly supported by grant funds or by funding. So I applaud my administrators for really looking carefully at every way of providing that support and finding some really creative ways of finding time for teachers to work together to support our students to be the best they can be.
Another
Laura.
comment or
I was
question?
just wondering, on that note, I'm sure this may have been tried before, but to what extent would it ever be possible to recruit volunteers, either maybe college students that are, math majors or have a special knowledge of math, or retirees, former teachers that might be in the area, not necessarily retirees from our district, but just general educators that have retired that might be able to help in the classrooms or assist in some way with filling the gap?
Yeah, we do a lot of that, of trying to recruit volunteers. Usually we pay them a small amount of money to, not volunteers, but retired citizens and other people who want to come in and do some tutoring but have an expertise in math. We also have some volunteers who come in, but what we find is most effective is either if it's a volunteer or someone we pay a stipend to, if they can come in on a regular basis. And not all volunteers can do that, but we have had college students come and work with our students, and we've had community members come in and work with our students. We had an excellent retired math teacher last year who was doing math support in some of our schools. So we try to use volunteers as much as possible, but for the children who need a good amount of support, it has to be consistent support. So we really almost have to provide the tutor rate so that they will come in, you know, on the schedule that we need them to be there. But we also do use volunteer tutors, and we would encourage anyone out in the community who wants to volunteer to tutor or work with students in our schools to please get in touch with any of the building administrators or get in touch with me. Other questions or comments?
I had a couple, and I'll try to be quick. Again, I think your school improvement goal number 3 I think is wonderful. The focus on pedagogical practices comes back. It's the companion piece to what Rob and Tim were talking about before, and again, the emphasis on consistency as opposed to uniformity. I really, and particularly when we end up having this discussion, and Bonnie, you highlighted it, there is this trend where everybody who teaches believes that their number one goals are teaching language and English, you know, writing, ELA, and math. And I'm going to push back against that too on behalf of those folks out there who believe that the tyranny of localism isn't such a bad thing, that when you have terrific history teachers, when you have great artists like we've seen in our community, that some of that comes at the expense. You know, it doesn't always work out that it's 1 + 1 = 3. The Common Core, which is behind this push, and it comes down translated through the MCAS, is driving everyone. I have colleagues in the field of history who believe that within a decade we're all just going to be literacy teachers if we keep going this way, and that the reading of great works and the really delving into you know, the wonderful creativity that comes out of art and other things, that unless you can tie it to math or English and science, right, that it's going to be shuffled off to the side. And I think that what you guys have done is really moved us ahead as a school system, and that I applaud all that's here. I think that the challenge is to continue to celebrate those things that the Common Core and MCAS don't prioritize, because there's no question but that there is a priority structure, and it's coming from the top down to us about what matters for our children's education. And I think it's fair to say that there's still some debate about that. Now, the folks up top have a lot of money, which we need, and since we need the money, we've paid for the tune. So I think that is the challenge, and I think this is terrific because good practice. And I guess I'll finish with this point as a spouse of a special needs educator. When we talk about needing them to be well versed in all of the disciplines where they might be working with, you know, so if you're a math teacher, you're going to get great at math. If you're, you know, an English, you're going to get great at English. If you're a special needs teacher, you're going to be great in both of those things and special needs too. We're going to be breeding these super teachers out there, and I think that's really, it becomes very challenging for a district to have the resources to hire people who can do that, because you really have to be extraordinary to be able to do all 3 of those things at an exemplary level, and that comes back to part of the broader discussion, you know, that's in our minutes about the resources that are available and our performance on MCAS. And that brings us back around, I think, inevitably to the discussion of why the override is necessary if we want to continue to make good on the promises that our building administrators are making here. So.
And Peter, I just want to make one comment about what you're saying about all teachers being teachers of literacy and only teachers of literacy. I really believe in Easthampton, and this is, Easthampton Public Schools have had a history of this, of taking the state mandates and implementing them in a way that doesn't impact negatively on a teacher's ability to use their artistry and their knowledge in our schools. So I think in our school, the approach that I'm asking my administrators to take with their teachers and they're asking the teachers to take is, rather than making them all teachers of literacy or all teachers of math, that's not our intent at all, but it's for them to look for opportunities in their particular content area for helping to support some of these skills that are in the Common Core in literacy and math. And certainly art lends itself to that in a very positive way. That whole design piece before creating the piece of art, and it very closely replicates the writing process. So it's really about looking for opportunities rather than, you know, and I agree with you, Peter, making everyone march in a robotic way about teaching. We've never been that way in our district. I don't think we ever will be. And I think our administrators would attest to that as well, and I think they've spoken
Right,
to
and
that as well.
that's what I'm talking about. I think it's a fear, and I don't think it's a baseless fear. I think there's a concern in the educational community that this process that we're going through could drive folks in that direction, and I applaud the evidence that we've seen tonight that suggests that we're still trying to maintain the qualities that you've just described. And you know, as someone who serves on the school committee, I will continue to express my support for curricular diversity and pedagogical diversity, so that we can continue to do some of the things that I think are important in public education, which aren't captured by MCAS, and which are placed at a lower level of priority by the Common Core. So I know that we have to address those two things. I'm just going to continue to advocate that there's more to the educational experience of our children than can be revealed through the MCAS results, and there's much more to a great education than what the Common Core would prescribe if we were to just take it whole.
And I think it's important for all of us that you do have that attitude, Peter, and the school committee, that you support that kind of education in our schools, because that's also what we believe in. We appreciate your support on that. Any other questions or comments? Or from you as well, Allison? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Allison.
Peter,
Yes,
can I
Mike.
go back one?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, but I didn't get a chance to push all these numbers until while we were talking, but I want to go back to the school enrollment.
Yep.
And I guess I'd like a little more analysis, and I don't expect it this evening, but our net gain of 9 students really came because we have a large kindergarten class. There's 21 students that appear to have dropped or not continued from grade to grade between K and 1,
Right.
5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 9, 10. And so I'm curious as to if you can identify, clearly some of those students may have stayed in the grade they were in, but I'm curious as to why these 21 numbers don't move along. Because I'm still very sensitive to the costs of charter and choice, and I think if we look at school enrollment from that perspective, what happens when a student who's in our kindergarten doesn't come to our first grade? Where do they go, and why? So I
Because
don't
once
know.
they get to first grade, they stay for second, right? There's no change, right? If we look at,
Well, in this comparison, correct.
right,
Once they get into, if they choose to get into the elementary system, they stay, and we've actually gained a few. I presume that that's choice, or maybe families moving into the community. And I'm kind of just as interested in the gains, but I'm more concerned about the losses. And then there seems to be, in middle school, there seems to be some churning, and then some churning from middle to high. And so I'm just curious if
Getting
you
the
can
data
take a
on
look at that to see. And it could be that the students are all just moving around. It's hard to tell what's happening between, like on the high school level, between our school and what happens at Smith Vocational, and is a loss in our 10th grade a gain at Smith Voc in 10th grade or something like that.
Yeah, we can track all of those students and let you know specifically what's happened to all of them. And I will also mention that any of the students, any of the families who decided to choice their students out of our district this year are receiving a survey with a stamped self-addressed envelope to give us feedback on why they made that choice.
and I appreciate, Mike, you're focusing us on those things, because I think that there are these key pinch points to look at, and I know that the superintendent and the building administrators and Shirley Gilfeather are looking at it. I think the presentation last time was terrific. I wanted just to add that as a comment. I think that between the presentation that, and I always forget the official title that Shirley has, it's not just director of
Of curriculum and grants.
It's curriculum and grants, right? And the building administrators tonight, there are so many reasons to be excited about what we are doing that it really behooves us to figure out what is the perception that's influencing the decisions at those key places. Because once folks start in first grade, the second grade from last year to this year is exactly the same. Second to third grade, we're actually up 3. Third grade to fourth grade, we're up 4. I mean, those are really good indicators, but you're right. Then we have a school-wide drop of 14 that we need to look at the middle school and say, is that a significant enough number that there's something there that isn't already being addressed in these terrific school improvement goals that we've heard about tonight, that we can do a better job with that. So,
And also
thank you.
keeping in mind, we will get the specifics on all of those numbers, but keeping in mind that some of our families move out of the district. They move away, and so that also lends itself to that attrition. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then we move to matters for action. Oh, just a quick note, and I say this because I have 3 building administrators who are hard to capture in one place. Gilda-Bear's gonna spend some time here at 50 Payson, but if you would like Gilda-Bear to spend any time at your school, perhaps in an art classroom, or to inspire some writing, I don't know, you could even count the number of paint strokes to work the math, no, that's not nice, sorry. But if you would like to have Gilda-Bear spend some time, she would be happy to come and visit any one of the schools, and we can figure out how to make that possible.
Is Gilda going to be here until she goes on her tour?
Gilda's gonna be here and then downstairs in the city clerk's office for a week or longer until she finds out. She's gonna travel a bit. Through the holidays, she's gonna be moving around. I just think when you have a great thing that happens in the city, any way we can keep it going by keeping the evidence of it out there on public display, we should. So she told me that she wasn't gonna hang out in our dining room any longer. Or someone at home told me that she wasn't gonna hang out in our dining room any longer. I heard that voice. See?
And so I'll encourage my administrators to let me know when they'd like to have Gilda make a visit.
Okay, thanks. Minutes, yes? You wanna do the minutes?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Motion to approve the minutes of the work session and regular session meetings on September 25th, 2012.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Because I just want to highlight in the minutes the MCAS update, which again, I think last time was terrific. And the note in here for anyone who doesn't read through the minutes, that Ms. Gilfeather and Superintendent Follansby both expressed their concerns that with limited funds over the years, and that the depletion of early intervention at the middle and high school levels due to limited and reduced funds is beginning to have an impact on MCAS scores at these levels. I don't think we can underscore that enough. Other comments? All in favor? Aye, thank you.
I abstain, since I wasn't.
Yeah, and I guess I'll abstain from the work session minutes, but vote in favor of the regular session minutes.
Thank
Since
you.
I wasn't in attendance at the work session.
Okay, warrants and payroll?
Move to approve the school payroll dated October 4th, 2012, in the amount of $463,332.64.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the school payroll dated the 4th of October 2012 in the amount of $463,332.64. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Move to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated October 4th, 2012, in the amount of $281,333.06.
Second.
Motion made to approve the accounts payable authorization for payment dated the 4th of October 2012 in the amount of $281,333.06. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
I believe that's all of that. Yes.
Yes, is that, just those two, thanks. All right, we have 3 field trip requests that we need to approve. We'll entertain motions on each of them in order. The first one is, well,
Move that the high school field trip to Granby, Connecticut for the senior outing at High Meadows be approved.
Second.
okay. Does this sound like a good idea, Bailey?
Sure.
Sure, okay. Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
I
Aye, thank you.
move that the high school trip to Newport, Rhode Island to look at the mansions in an effort to do a comparison between that lifestyle and the lifestyle of the Mills, and I think Lowell is mentioned as being a sample, is a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Move to approve that.
Second.
I have a question.
Yes,
I was just curious about where the funding was gonna come from for this.
for the trip,
This trip to Newport, Rhode
the
Island.
one that was submitted on October 2nd, right? The cost per student here is listed, Ms. Cannon and Ms. Allen have it down as the cost per student is 0.
Right, and source of funding.
It's probably the Riverside bus at no cost with.
Right.
And it's a drive-by
The
tour, I'm
chaperone
guessing.
drive-in.
Right.
That's probably at the Riverside bus, so there isn't a cost to our students.
Okay.
I am curious what class that's for
Yeah,
and
what
what
class?
grade.
What is it for?
This is the separate resource room class at the high school.
Is that Miss Cannon's class?
No, Ms. Allen's class.
Right.
Not Excel. It's slipping my mind right now. But it's like a resource room for special needs students, and so they're taking this trip.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, if Newport got scrutiny, what about
Well,
Broadway?
I certainly am going to move that the class trip for Senator Pepin to Broadway in New York City be approved.
And just so folks know, this is a vacation week trip to see a musical, and that there is no cost to the district, the source of funding. This is just an enrichment opportunity that we're extending.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Then, Nancy, we have a request from Ms. Rebello for school choice openings.
That's right. For 2 in grade 1 and 1 in grade 6.
I'll entertain a motion.
And
2 in grade 8.
I'm
in
sorry,
grade
2
8.
in grade 8, 1 in grade 6.
Move that these 3 school choice openings be approved.
Second?
Second. And again, well, discussion? Motion made and seconded discussion. Just noting that this is sort of goes to the essence of what we hope to be doing more broadly, which is keeping folks. These are folks who are moving out of town but want their children to stay in this educational system, right? I think it's likely to get overlooked because by the end of the meeting, you know, the press is going away and all of the rest. But I think that that's exactly what we're after. So I really endorse this idea. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. We'll entertain one last motion then.
Adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.